And I want to give some numbers. We're turning in initiative I-2113, and we hope everybody will vote for this next year. We're going to turn it into the legislature. We'd love for them to just vote for it and make it law, because the sooner the better on this. We don't need another year of criminals having a free pass to just drive around. But I want to give one number that I think is particularly important. We scanned in all the data from everybody that signed the initiatives, and we run them against a voter, sort of a voter ID. We look at first against the voter registration rolls, so that we can ensure that we're getting the right number, the equivalent number of registered voters. But then secondly, we run them against like a voter ID to see whether they're Democrat, Independent, Republican. And the numbers that we're turning in today, 54% of these signatures are Democrat or Independent, and 46% are Republican. So this is a broad sweep of people across all spectrum of ideology. This is not a partisan issue. In particular, the question of, well, why are you doing this? I think, to me, it's self-evident, but you've got Mongadingra here saying we don't have any data that indicates anything's wrong. And we're standing here in front of Dunn Lumber, in particular because criminals drove into this building, backed in, stole a bunch of goods, and Mike will tell you about this in a minute. They stole a bunch of goods, peeled out, hit a cop car on the way out, and left the scene. What we've done with this law is basically given criminals a free getaway car. They've learned, and they learned this very quickly. I spoke to a police officer a year ago who told me that what he found the criminals were doing almost immediately after this law was passed is that they would have their girlfriends rent a car, they would report it stolen, and then he had a free getaway car. Take the license plate off, police will not pursue you, you've got a free getaway car. So this free getaway car bill, basically the legislature subsidizing the getaway car for criminals, needs to be turned around and stopped. But more sort of tragically, this bill has led to loss of life. And you'll hear from Amber Goldade, who tragically lost her daughter as well. And I don't want to make light of it. I'm usually sort of a snarky, smart-alecky person, and this one sort of hits me in the heart. This is a family that lost their daughter. And so I'm gonna first turn it over to Mike Dunn so he can tell you about what's going on with him. I called him and asked him if we could come here, and he said, you know, this happens almost every week. And sort of like they've gotten used to it. And I want to say very clearly, we don't need to get used to that. That's not something we should get used to. We need to push back. We need to get this law reversed and repeal the damage that the legislature has done. Mike, would you come over here and tell us your story? And then after him, Amber Goldade will come up and tell us about her story.
Well, just to be clear, this exact kind of thing doesn't happen every week. Some kind of theft, some kind of break-in, some kind of person trying to take stuff out through the front door does happen every week. This has happened probably 3 times at 3 different locations. November 12th, 4:30 in the morning, Sunday morning, the truck backs all the way through into the store, hits a spray paint display, spray paint everywhere, glass everywhere, material everywhere. They jump out, load $10,000 worth of material, power tools, back into the van, take off, clip the cop car, and of course they just drive away. You know, we did it back in the napkins this morning, probably $120,000 once you add the damage, the truck, the materials, and then the cost of putting in the bollards that are going to go here so that this doesn't happen in the future. What if there have been people here? What if we have night crews? What if they've been in there? But I want to talk about the emotional cost to my employees who bust their butts every day to make the store look beautiful, to fill the stock, to keep it clean. 2 hours after this incident, they had it all cleaned up, boarded up, and we just did this little decoration to try and raise the spirits around here because it's hard. And we've been here since 1948. We've been, and before that, down on Lake Union during the Depression, during the Great Recession. This is a whole nother ball game. This is a really hard issue for us. Thank you for listening.
My name is Amber Goldade, and this issue is very dear and near to my heart. We lost our daughter.
Can you step up a little bit for those?
Oops, I'm sorry. I lost my 12-year-old daughter, Immaculée, back in January of 2022. As she was walking along the side of the road with her best friend, they were holding hands, and they were hit from behind by a stolen lawn truck, a large lawn truck. Immaculée was killed instantly. Thank God that Kathleen survived. But just imagine just her emotional state. She survived, but her friend did not. This man who killed my daughter, 2 weeks prior to the accident, he went and robbed a lawn service company, stole thousands of dollars worth of their work stuff. And then the morning of the accident, he went back and robbed them again and stole more stuff and stole the truck that he eventually killed my daughter with. Well, the thing is, the night of the first robbery, 2 weeks prior to my daughter's death, the police had them when they were coming out of the business. But they knew that they didn't have to stop. They just had to keep going. And they got away. So he was out. When he could have been arrested, he already had a warrant out for his arrest. And so, but him and his accomplices just know they just have to keep driving. That's what these criminals do. They just keep driving. They drive recklessly. They drive high. They drive intoxicated. They don't care about the public. They just care about themselves and getting away. And we have to stop this, and we have to let the police be able to do their jobs, their oath that they swore that they would protect the community. They need to be able to protect us. They need to protect the children that they should just be able to walk down the road and just know that they can make it home safely. But that day, my daughter did not. And this just needs to end. The police need to have full pursuit rights. This partial pursuit doesn't work. It still would not have protected my daughter and her best friend. It would still happen. It is not a strong enough law. The police need to have full pursuit rights so they can protect us from these criminals. This is not about the criminals. They're not driving themselves to work in the stolen car. This is not about them getting to work. No, they don't care. This is about life. And life needs to be protected from the criminals. Thank you.
So one last thing that I want to add. This is property damage and life that have been taken because this law hasn't, because the law was changed. I would also add there's an important, very American principle, which is local control. When the legislature said, we will arbitrarily decide that you may not pursue criminals, they basically said, if you're out in Omak at 2 in the morning, you don't get a right to choose what's the right time. If you're in Kirkland at 2 in the afternoon, that's the policy. When all the kids are out of school, that's the policy we're going to apply across the whole state. I believe that the local jurisdictions, the local sheriffs, the local police officers, and their dispatch have the wisdom and should have the ability to make the call, which they did before. This is not a let's return to some sort of chaos. This is a return to reasonable local jurisdiction with reasonable decision making by the local police, which is what we had before. That's what we're asking to return back to. Thank you. This afternoon at 1:30, we'll be down in Tumwater turning in all these signatures. And we appreciate everybody coming out. and we've got 3 down, 3 more to go. We'll be talking to you next week with our next 2. Thanks. Dave Reichert's over here if you guys want to take the Dave Reichert. You're welcome to, yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Well, I didn't have a speaking role this morning. I'm here as a retired police officer in support of this initiative. I've signed it along with over 400,000 people.
410,000.
410,000 other people in Washington State. I wanted to be here to support Dunn Lumber, Amber and her family. And you heard the emotion in Mike's voice with the loss of property. It's not just once, but 2 or 3 times at this store and other stores across the state. This is happening all across Washington State. You heard the emotion in his voice at the potential injury and loss of his employees. That's where it's hitting his heart. And then you heard from Amber, who lost her daughter. Ladies and gentlemen, this is about life and death. This is about right and wrong. This world that we're living in is upside down, and people recognize that. Wherever I go and speak, people are mentioning this world is upside down. Right is wrong, wrong is right, up is down, down is up. And then we blame the victims and we excuse the criminals. Where have we come from and how did we get here? We came from a world that was law and order because we allowed the police to do their job. We supported our law enforcement officers. That's why I'm here today, to prevent people from losing their lives, from property loss, continuing causing rising prices. When we allow criminals to break the law every day and there are no consequences, they will continue to break the law. There has to be consequences. This is a common sense, and this is a word I've been trying not to use because it's overused, but it seems appropriate today. But people tell me common sense is not so common anymore, which I think everyone would nod their head and agree with. I believe that we need to support the police in this. I believe that we need to get back to recognizing what's right and wrong. I believe that we need to start enforcing the law and holding a people accountable. Our children are growing up believing there are no consequences to stealing or hurting other people. We have to change that. And that takes all of us to do that. So thank you all very much for being here today supporting this effort.
I could do either way.
Brian, if I could just ask a quick question then. I want to know ultimately, who is against you guys? And tell me the role of Dingra, State Senator Dingra in all of this, opposing you guys at this point.
Well, I would hope that nobody's opposing this, right? We've got crime going up and people being injured. There are attempts, I was sort of shocked that the ACLU is out there with a snitch line. If you see signature gatherers, call and describe the person, tell us what they look like, and I'm not sure what the intent of that is. Certainly the Democrat Party has come online as against this. I don't believe this should be a partisan issue. This is impacting all Washingtonians, and I would strongly encourage the legislature to look at this seriously and vote for it. It's not a hard decision. We're just returning it back to what it was before.
Is there an instance where you would consider police pursuit to not be proper? Because it says reasonable police pursuit.
Absolutely there is. And what I was saying before, I believe they should return this to the local jurisdiction to make the call. So I think that a police dispatcher in Kirkland, Washington at 2 in the afternoon, right as all the buses are out there, if there's something happening, a reasonable thing would be to say, let's don't do high-speed pursuit. And one of the things I want to clarify, this isn't high speed. I'm not saying let's go chase everything at 250 miles an hour. In the Dunn Lumber case here, he was just pulling out, and there was no speed even involved. But to your question, I believe absolutely there are reasonable times not to pursue. But I would like to return that to the common sense of the police chief of police or the sheriff.
Would this apply to Washington State Patrol and other states?
Yes, yes.
So what do you say to people who question whether or not police chases are needed, that they're dangerous?
Well, I'd like to show. Mongading is saying there's no data that that it's needed. Show me the data that it is. Right? I can show you the data. Crime just in Seattle alone, car theft has jumped. There's 2,000 more car thefts in Seattle City, just in the city, since this law was implemented. It's now over 7,000 cars up to date. We don't even have the last 2 months of data in. So I would say the data is very clearly there that crime has jumped significantly. And I believe that the police, the local police, can make reasonable decisions about pursuit. If there was some huge, we would have a debate if there was thousands of people being hit by police. That's not happening, but we do have thousands of cars being stolen and used as getaway vehicles for other crimes. This is a crime on top of a crime on top of a crime. And I think the evidence is overwhelming that this law has had a negative impact on society and on the safety of Washingtonians.
Can you explain a little bit for the people that didn't participate what this process looks like?
You bet.
What's next? How does the legislature act on this, or does it?
That's a great question. So this is an initiative to the legislature. There are two types in Washington. There's initiative to the people, which you have to turn in by July, or an initiative to the legislature, which you turn in by the end of December. So these all the signatures have to be turned in by December 29th. The Secretary of State then counts them and validates that you've got the requisite number of signatures that are registered voters in Washington, and that's, you need about 324,000 and change for this to qualify, that are validated signatures. We're turning in, normally there's 15% or so that are not registered or not old enough or Mickey Mouse signed or something like that. Someone's messing with you. So you want to have, if you can, you'd like to have at least 400,000 or so. We're turning in 410,000 today. We'll have more by the end of the month. It goes to the Secretary of State. They're in the middle of scanning these in and validating them. And then once they've validated that this has the requisite number of signatures, they then turn it into the legislature in session next January. Then once it goes to the legislature, they have several options. The law says, the Constitution says, there is no higher priority for the legislature other than the budget than an initiative to the legislature. So this should be their top priority. They should look at this first. However, they can also, within the law, choose to completely ignore it if that's what they decide to do. I would recommend they don't, because this is a lot of people. Washington State has one of the highest requirements for signatures to get something on the ballot. To get 400,000 people to stop and sign this is an enormous effort, and it also suggests that this is a popular issue. Popular meaning people care about this. But if the legislature decides not to do anything with it, which is within their prerogative, then it would go on the ballot automatically next November. One other thing that they can do is they can create their own counter initiative if they'd like, which would also go on the ballot. But I think this comes with a caution. I heard Jay Inslee talk, not about this one, they were talking about the cap and trade, which we turned in 3 weeks ago. They're talking about changing the law, but I believe there's legal precedent that forbids them from changing the law. If they do something, they have to make an initiative and put it on the ballot, and they can't put 5 on the ballot, they can choose 1. And so the pressure will be on the legislature, look at these. You can pass them, and they're good law. They make sense. Or you can put your counter on the ballot for the voters to choose. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. I believe that these laws have been put in place without a lot of consent. Yes, we voted for the people that put them there. Yes, you can argue that. But when you talk to average citizens, they're not happy about sort of the crazy that's been put in place. And I want to give voters a chance to have their voice rejected or accepted.
You think it's gonna work?
Absolutely. Yes, people are mad about what's going on. Hang on one second, over here first, and then.
What feedback have you gotten from police departments on the types of pursuits they would like to do that they can't right now? I know you said like not during the middle of the day when there are
Right.
buses out. Which ones have you kind of? What have you heard from them so far?
Well, so we got the endorsement of Walk Cops for this particular initiative. I haven't had long, deep conversations with them about which particular ones they would pursue. What I did have conversations with them is that this, before there was local jurisdiction, and the image, I think the image that's been since the Black Lives Matter riots happened and the sort of anti-police sentiment began to roll out, the police have been under siege, right? They're a little afraid to do anything because they're going to get blamed. Most of the men, I won't deny there's always going to be some bad apples somewhere, but most of the men and women that join the police force want to do good. They want to protect society. That's the reason they became officers. And they want to protect safety. They're not out there for doing something crazy. So when you talk to them, the comments that come back to me when I talk to police officers are, this really is something that should be done at a local level. There's a dispatch who's going to be talking to the chief of police, and they're going to have a conversation, hey, this is the situation right now, and if they think it's not safe, they'll call off the pursuit. But like I said, at OMAC at 2 in the morning, you've got somebody speeding down the highway. That's probably a lot different than downtown Seattle, right? And I think either we trust the police or we get rid of them, and I personally think we should trust the police.
There's been allegations of intimidation of signature gatherers. Is there any sort of action that your group is taking about that, or are you just trying to bring awareness?
Yeah, we'll bring awareness as one of the things. We've drafted a cease and desist that'll be going out shortly. And there's allegations. We actually have people will show up. We know that they're paid. They're paid intimidators, is what I would call them. They show up in front of a store, and they don't really have to do a whole lot. They just have to make noise. And people that would otherwise sign, they don't want anything to do with something scary going on, and so they sort of duck their heads and walk in and ignore it. So that's absolutely been going on. What the other tactic that's happened, and this is a sneaky tactic really, is intimidation is happening, but more than that, there's some well-funded group, and I'd like to find out who, that's going in. When they intimidate, we've chased off a couple of our signature gatherers. They chase them off into the parking lot, and then they have a flyer telling them that if they'll go to Florida until magically December 28th, they can get $3,000 to $4,000 by going to Florida. So there's a well-organized effort to try to shut this down. It's using both the candy and the stick, right, as well. We'll pursue it. I would call on Secretary of State Hobbs to come out strongly, and I would call on the Democrat Party to disavow this. They are actually promoting the snitch line, where these thugs get sent out to pursue, and one of the great things about America is that we've got a lot of freedom, and that means people can do things that you don't like. I don't think that harassing signature. I think in this state that's a gross misdemeanor. They're welcome to say don't sign it. They're welcome to make their case for why you shouldn't sign it. Harassing them, I think, goes over the line. So we'll take some legal action. I believe the benefit is as this has gotten out there and people have found out this is going on, we've actually had an increase in people calling us saying, hey, where do I sign? If this garbage is going on, I want to help. So for every bad thing, sometimes there's a good thing that comes in its place. Any other questions?
Do you expect lawmakers to pass any of these on their own, or do you think they'll all end up on the ballot?
If they were smart, they would. Well, if they were smart, they would They would, and they would take it away as a subject next year. But I don't think that they will. Honestly, I mean, there's a majority. The majority party's been in for, they've effectively controlled this state for 40 years, and they can do whatever they want. The reason for these is because they weren't taking action. They had an opportunity to fix this one in particular last year. They nibbled at the edges and didn't really do anything meaningful. So I think realistically, probably not. If they were strategically smart, they would. But I think these will be on the ballot next year, and we'll have a great discussion and a great American-style debate about what should happen in our society.
And if they do get passed on the ballot, how long would it take before they would take effect?
I don't know the exact. I can find that out for you. I do know that if they at the ballot, right?
Yeah.
And there's two things. If they voted for it in the legislature, it does not need a governor's signature. It becomes law. I'll find out for you on the when it happens at the ballot. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, everybody.